liftoff. It's 1:20, and we're glad to have you guys here with us. This is a presentation that's based on Apollo 13, but most of it is in reference to a STEM project that comes off of the Apollo 13 mission. To start off with, I'm Beth Janssen. I'm the media specialist at AGWSR K-12, so I teach everybody K-12, formerly K-5, 9-12, and then I'm just kind of hang out in the middle school one day a cycle. She is?
I'm Brenda Drake, and I teach middle school science and health, and we've gone to, I've been to the Space Educators Conference for 2 different times. Beth and I went in February, so a lot of what we're doing here came from one of the activities that we learned. I'm going to take this off.
You can hear you, Beth.
From one of the projects that we learned there, and we're kind of adjusting it to, right now it's not as much technology based, but we're looking at making it more technology based with other things.
Which these days isn't always a bad thing either, because STEM is all 4 things, and other things too, literacy, everything. And what she just referenced, so her and I just accidentally fell into being kind of the STEM rooms of our buildings. Her at the middle school, or she at the middle school has, in her science lab, she has a connected STEM lab. In the library that I am in all day, in the high school and the elementary, I have a STEM den. And we just started writing grants, and they just started like falling in our face. And so a couple that we went to were actually travel grants. In the past year, well actually like 8 months, we've been to the Janssen Space Center. We spent 3 days at the
Houston Space Center at the Space Educators Conference there.
It's called SEEK, and it was all expenses paid. So we had 3 days in Houston for that.
And that was through the Iowa Space Grant Consortium. So, on our resources, it's at the bottom, but you should apply. It's amazing. The other one we went to was the San Diego Zoo. We spent 2 nights, 3 days sleeping in the Safari Park at San Diego. All expenses paid. It was amazing. And it was all about conservation and how STEM works into conservation. So with that being said, we, going back to the NASA grant, part of that is to outreach. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity for Brenda and I to do our outreach. And part of our time there at NASA, we talked to Clay Anderson, who's actually from, where's he from? He's from Nebraska, but he went to Iowa State. He's an Iowa State grad.
Yep, and he has an office there. And at his plan, or at his presentation, he was talking about how communication is so undervalued in the STEM arena, and undervalued when it comes to people talking about the NASA space missions, because everybody talks about the fun stuff. No one ever talks about the communication. And the communication is actually the pivotal part of every mission. And so he showed us flight plans and kind of explained how those work. I just pulled up Apollo 13's, just because it was what we're talking about. And Clay was telling us that all the astronauts that get chosen for missions have to memorize these plans, which is crazy. They have to memorize the language that they use, the terminology, the coordinates, all that stuff they have to know, so that if they get up there and something goes wrong, they can still communicate with mission control and not have, like if they, I don't know, I guess I can't explain it, but they have to be able to communicate and know what's going on with or without that mission control part. And you're going to find out later when we do our thing what we're getting at there. Also, I was going to show you really quickly, and I just have it up on my Facebook because it was the easiest thing. That's Clay Anderson. This was us at the
workshop
at the Space Center. We got to go, I don't know if you guys ever knew this existed, but they have a 40-foot swimming pool, and the entire ISS model that's like full scale is in that swimming pool.
And that's where they train.
So in the olden days, like when we were kids, I remember seeing like they were in that centrifuge thing, and then they woo, which I really wanted to do, but they don't do it anymore. So when I went there, I was like, come on. But now it's in this, and they said that's the most like weightlessness.
In space, they actually have one diver per astronaut that they're in charge of when they do their training down there. So they're down there for like 8 hours at a time.
And they're in the actual spacesuit, because the actual spacesuit can take.
With everything they
Yeah.
can do.
I've been down there too, and it's 10 hours in the pool is 1 hour in the space. They
Yeah.
have to choreograph all of their moves.
And it's fascinating to
crazy.
see. And we got to scuba dive and all that stuff. There he is again talking about communication.
Where we actually did a training mission underwater where they had us put together some like PVC pipe things, and you had to swim through them, and picking up moon rocks with gloves on and stuff like that.
And we got to go to the mock-up center. We got to go in a shuttle. I put this picture of Stone Brenda. I picked that one to be our last picture because on Facebook that got the most likes. Everyone thought he was an astronaut. He was our guide.
He was our tour guide.
And Brenda and I were smart enough to know that if we just held back from the group,
We got to hear a lot more.
we
of what's
grabbed
going
some guy that wasn't even part of our group, and he hung with us and took us out kind of on our own. So that was kind of fun. But anyway, so that's kind of gives you an idea where we got this idea from. Hang on a second. So what I did on your resources is we put up a kind of a lesson plan guide so that you can do this with your students when you leave here. The first thing I'm going to tell you is you all have jobs. So if you want to kind of look at your job, there's a description on the back.
So on your little card, if you're Capcom, if you're an engineer, if you're an astronaut, you've got a specific job.
That's your specific role in NASA. And you may or may not know, but Apollo 13 launched on April 11th, 1970. And it came home on April 17th, 1970, and we all know it was a failed mission, but after they arrived safely back, they called it a successful mission because of all the things they learned because there was a disaster, and everyone came home alive. So they learned a lot of stuff. I learned through this, getting this together, that the actual problem happened 5.5 minutes after they took off, but they didn't know it for 2 more days. And so they had no idea that they were basically hurtling through space and potentially not coming back. So, and it's those 2 days, right after that 2 days, where this lesson comes in. So, if you were to teach this to students, you would first dress like this. And I actually did have a better costume, but when you wake up at 6:20 with the school van in your driveway at 6:20, you forget your stuff. So, I'm lucky I'm here the way it is. So, anyway, so you would go through here, and what you would do first is say, oops, I didn't even do it yet. You talk about STEM. What is STEM? You would talk about STEM with your students. What do you think it is? And you would hope that sooner or later they would come up with problem solving. Then you would say that those of you that have the astronaut, this first trailer applies to you. And keep in mind, some students may have never seen this movie or really not even know much about it. Oh, sorry.
Sentence is grammatically correct.
It's only a minute long.
All
They do have
13
a
flight controllers, when you go, no go for launch. You know that Easter vacation trip we had planned for our program? Procedures, control. There might be a slight change in destination. Maybe say, the moon. Booster, go. Retro. We'll go flight GNC. And I take the controls and I steer it around. FAO. We go flight. For a nice, soft landing on the moon. Better than the launch.
Does it bother you that the public regards this flight as routine?
It's nothing routine about flying to the moon, I can vouch for that. Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch. The clock is running!
Houston, we have cleared the tower at 13:13.
Hey guys, we're going to the moon. This is the crew of the Apollo 13, wishing everyone back on Earth a pleasant evening. Houston, we have a problem. We got a wicked shimmy up here.
Houston, we are measuring something out into space. It's definitely a gas of some sort.
Like the heart rate just skyrocketing. The Apollo 13 spacecraft is apparently losing breathing oxygen. The emergency has ruled out any chance of a lunar landing.
Why are so many people here? Something broken with Daddy's spaceship.
I have a request from the news people.
Take it up with my husband. He'll be home on Friday.
Find me, I've lost the radio contact. Econ, what's your dad telling you?
It's really a quadruple failure. That can't happen. It's got to be instrumentation.
Just explain your dad.
This ray will skip right out of the atmosphere. We're never going to get back.
Oh, we're looking at less than 15 minutes of life support in the ox. We never lost an American in space. We're sure as hell not going to lose one on our watch. I would say, do you read me? Well,
Okay, so there's if you're an astronaut, and again, if you're doing this with students, if you are an engineer, you're going to find this interesting.
We have a situation brewing with carbon dioxide.
we have CO2 filter problem on the lunar module.
5 filters on the lane.
What do you mean for 2 guys for a day and a half?
So I told the doctor they're already up to date on the gauges.
Anything over 15, we get impaired judgment, blackouts, the beginnings of brain asphyxia. What about the scrubbers in the command module?
It takes wet cartridges, ones on the limit around.
Tell me this isn't a government operation.
This just isn't a contingency we remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic. Well, I suggest you gentlemen then we put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. It's upstairs. Handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this. Using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build the building.
There is some coffee going too, someone.
And then, if you are, we're on our last one here, if you are a Capcom person, this applies to you.
The deadly CO2 gas is literally poisoning the astronauts with every breath. In and out.
Heads up.
That's not comment.
Heads up, people, look out now.
What's this?
That's what they gotta make.
Well, I hope you got the procedures for me. Right here.
That's it.
Affirmative, Andy. Jack's got one right here. Okay, we have an unusual procedure for you here. What's your rip the cover off the flight plan?
With pleasure.
Lithium hydroxide canister, two lithium hydroxide canisters, I'm sorry. A roll of gray tape.
Duct tape, LCG bag, 2 LCG bags, red suit hoses, got a white line cover.
So even, Clay brought that up, even the difference between the gray tape and the duct tape, that's very important in their world because it could be honestly life or death if the Capcom guy says gray tape when the engineer had used
The duct tape.
the duct tape. And so that's what we're going to experience here today, everybody.
Is communication.
So if you are, first of all, let me explain it really quick. If you are an engineer, you are actually going to be, don't move yet, but you will be planted right here. If you are Capcom, you will be planted there. And then the astronauts will pick anywhere where there's a blue, there's 5 blue dividers, one there, and there.
And we can move them around a little bit if we need to.
And your team will decide which one you want to go to. But what's going to happen is the engineer can see the finished product. And the engineer is going to,
Like the cat.
basically memorize it, then walk over here, visit somewhere here in the middle with your Capcom person,
Capcom person will have this, and if you're a Capcom, can you grab a pen? Did you bring any up here?
I got some.
We have no pads and no pens. And then you can make notes, the Capcom person can. Then, so right here, engineers and Capcom can talk. Then the Capcom person is going to meet their astronaut here, holding their notes, because you can't show them your notes. You can look at the notes, and you have to verbalize it to the astronaut. The astronaut goes back and does what you told them to do. Okay? There is a prize for the winning team, and it is stellar. Okay. So, all right. First, everybody needs to find their teams, and you all have some sort, because it's the only stickers I can find, some sort of stop sign or some sort of. So if you want to find your teams right now and just kind of collect in the middle with your trio.
So you want to look and see if there's stop sign, handicap sticker sign, stoplight, there's stoplight here.
And just for the record, this is a good way for differentiated learning too. All right, do you have your group? So, okay, it's kind of on your honor because
you can find an area then.
Find one of, actually not yet. Just tell your group which one you're going to, I guess we better assign.
Yep.
All right, this group's going to be here. This group, you're there.
I have a pen.
Okay.
And this group is going to be there.
Hopefully we'll get you back.
And who's my last one I haven't talked to? You guys are there. Now, the only person that can see behind those dividers is the astronaut. So Capcom people, you have to stay in this area. The astronaut has to come to you. Okay? All right. Is everybody ready?
Okay.
Think of yourself like kids. And go.
One piece at a time, one piece at a time.
So you're looking at that, and I'm telling you, Capcom person. We always suggest breaking it down because you can come over here multiple times.
We kind of come back and revisit.
Yep, you can come back and visit as
Study
many
the
as you need.
pieces. Okay.
So then find your person over here, converse with them.
Whoever his person is.
So Capcom person, you could come up here because you're going to end up looking at yours.
And we had a question, everything has to be exact. And God willing, everybody's package has exact things in it. No!
Okay.
I don't, should we just start off by chance? Sorry.
Sure, yeah. So,
Yep, okay, yep.
And you go and tell your astronaut.
But that's in the hallway here. Yep.
Amber coming out of it.
Snowman, red solar triangles, and antler coming out the top. Okay.
Okay. Oh my gosh, it won't be good. That's what you said. No.
Oh, you did? Above that, the red piece is a little bit
No cheating.
And then there's a yellow line. Oh, let me double check that. So sorry. It's actually a combination of green and blue. Green is on the right, blue is on the left. And then I want to add one more piece up there.
They can come back.
Then your astronaut can start putting things together. You can go and talk to him as many times as you need to.
Yeah, it can be ongoing the whole time. You have 10 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So you might want to take your astronaut back and have them get started.
Yes.
No.
Sure. Go on.
No cheating.
Okay, she said we can have an extra pen.
This is a snowman.
Yes, that's what I would do. Is tell them a little part, go do it, and then come back.
But you can't show them your notes. You cannot show your notes.
So on the very top of the head, there's a at the very top. And then on the right hand side is a blue stick with a yellow button. Yes, Larkin. I'm going to say you're right. Yeah. Blue sticks. They're like
Yes, I think.
popsicle sticks.
Beth, you can, the astronauts can ask questions to the Capcom.
Do those.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, do that.
They can
Think
converse
about
back
it.
and forth.
Yep.
I don't know what the book's like.
Spiral.
You can open everything. Yep. Sorry. We should have said that. Everything's openable.
Everything that's in the envelope or the baggie.
Coming out of the
we
top,
will
my
use.
knees up from the open side or from the shoulder. I'll find out that as well.
Wrapped around. Elbows up inside the elbow. This piece is red on the elbow red and it's doing in person like so arms up and at the where the hand is say purple. We are
Well, no, that's why.
And that would be just.
and that would be
You have 8 more minutes or less. Who knows?
now on the left side.
And you can do this with about anything.
Yeah, can
you ask? So on the left
Like
hand
if you have the
side,
hummingbirds, you
a
can tell
red
them
stick
to talk
with
programs
green
and
balls.
things. So you can
Okay.
do this with about anything.
And next to the green stick,
Spiros.
opposite colored eyes.
So you don't necessarily have to do.
Okay, so next to it you'll have a blue eye. And on the side with the blue stick you're gonna have a green eye. Yeah, so just kind of the reverse. Okay.
Let me do that.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I'll take some more.
At the very top of the stone, slightly to the left, our other side, like the very top, there should be a blue snowflake with a pink eraser, like the one that goes on the back of the pencil, so the pink eraser that's on top of the snowflake sitting directly on. So, and if the snowman's head is here, just like that, it should be positioned slightly to the left. Almost like ears of the snowman. There should be half of a blue stick, like what are the sticks? They're like those brown sticks that they're like the dogs about so like
Okay, so we've got the eyes.
right side of the
Okay, so now we're going to go to the red cello.
Get my phone out, it's stuck in my
And
outfit here.
okay, because you're gonna put a yellow button in there. Okay, so opposite. Okay, so right underneath it, someone put orange pom-pom.
About 5 minutes.
Black crescent.
there should be a yellow
Okay.
stick. Someone's left, and there should be a green fuzzy ball with a stick on the side.
Excuse me.
Right underneath the red top,
It's right on.
There's an orange fuzzy ball,
Three closed.
and then a little crooked mouth that goes underneath it.
Three closed, forming a zigzag.
And there's a little mouth that goes underneath the green fuzzy ball.
And that's for the top of it.
Okay.
Part of it. And at the end of that would be an orange fuzz ball. About this, like the hand.
11 o'clock on
Yeah, also.
the snowman's right. Or, well, both of them.
The cup.
I'm moving the
It's
field
like
to
shot
kick
up.
off. Yep, and then the snowflake, so we get 11 o'clock.
In that cup is, sticking out of it is,
Okay.
looks like a reindeer.
I've been doing the same thing. Okay.
Like a three-toed one, but it's made of.
Now you've got the mouth done, so underneath the mouth, you're gonna put, there's a golf ball. You're gonna put that right on the chin, okay? And on the left-hand side, which will be under where you've got the, and that kind of deep area, there should be a flower. Okay, and then we're gonna go, stay on that left side, we're gonna go down the body. Okay. Yeah, things that make sense. Then on the left-hand side, under the flower on the body part, you're gonna take three clothespins and you're gonna clip them together so it kind of goes up, down, up. Okay, and put a orange pom-pom at the end.
The snowflake was at the 11 o'clock position on the right side.
The snowman's right.
Snowman's right, okay.
And there's a pink eraser on top of that snowflake. Flip the, and I flip this. And because
You're at 4 minutes.
because
Just
it's
under.
that blue snowflake that put at 11 o'clock.
Is it just a fuzzy one?
So it's easy to set the
I'm coming as close to a snowflake.
sitting right at the left.
The snowman's right up his nose. There should be a small pink flower that just rests on its face. Now, I think we're going to move on to the midsection.
Yeah, there should be an actual blue snowflake cut out of paper or something.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Um,
And the pink eraser is on top of it.
Yeah, no, don't talk to her.
You're gonna get that?
Oh, no.
Spaced out about an inch beneath that, there's a small pink button. It's hard. And then underneath that pink button.
Okay, it only gets better from here, I'm just saying, only gets better.
Oh, get done?
Sorry for being positive there. Okay, so on the right-hand side, there's a thing that looks like a pool noodle.
To the snowman's
Okay.
left of its
And-
golf ball lounge, there are two hearts.
Well, as you're looking at it, so you're right, okay? So you're gonna take it and you're gonna kind of make a V out of it. Okay. So you're gonna have it go down, up. Okay. So on the very, on the part that's the small part that's going down, you're gonna take a purple the part that goes up, that's right here. Yeah. At the end of it, you're gonna okay?
Above the cup, just above, still physically on the snowflake.
Purple on the breast, and then I'm watching them and I'm like, oh, interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the trap was like, I did this with a few dollars. Like, I was like, Irvin, and I'm like, I know I'm like, and then we get there and it was like, okay.
Minute and a half.
blue.
Okay.
1.5 minutes to go.
Think of it as buttons above each above the pencil.
Okay.
Yeah, nowadays, you know, Capcom would be going with the engineer, going, engineer, take a picture. Take pictures, let's upload that, send that.
Of the
There you go. You know.
And then the crescent.
I mean, seriously, wouldn't that be the solution nowadays? You send them a picture, you know?
I wondered about that too, like, but I don't think that.
Well, and not during politics.
Well, definitely, yeah, but even now, because I can't say for sure, but remember taking that, I think they said that they still just do, I mean, it's still basically the same radio type stuff. Because it's not that too. But so used to they said that the radio was like what is it? 2 seconds.
Yeah, so it's like, no, so we're like, when our, okay, but hold on, we're not done at the midsection yet. Okay, so, you're right side.
About 45 seconds, I'm making it up, Looks like 45 seconds.
Okay, you're gonna take a hot pink card and place it the normal way, and then invert a light pink one right underneath it so that.
All right, this will be your last communication, so if you're engineers, get your cap times. This is your last one.
We're going down, Apollo 13. Mission control.
Our snowman will not save us. Our snowman will not save us.
Here, we'll do a purple and a pink one. It should be the pink one.
1 minute timer.
That's it.
We're gonna work on the snowman.
So this is your last round of communication. I didn't even, we're going dark any second.
I don't know, we're doing good in 3 minutes.
It's like right in the middle of this head, so I assume it's gonna help us.
Okay, so.
On the flower, that's the one that's like on top, so it's slide to the left. I told them to put the eraser there, I think that's how much elevation.
Okay, so bottom of the, okay. Winner gets the
I'm on my second helmet. My son borrowed it. I bought this one in 2007 and I had somebody steal a lot of the taxes on it. I just got this one.
Actually, there's purple nail cleaner tied around its base, and there's a, yes, there's a red gift shop, and then at the very end of the arm,
5, 6, 7, 8.
And I think we're good. Get with your teams. It's going to take Brenda and I just a second.
We can go look at our teams now, right? And see.
Go ahead and, well, you can't touch anything.
I won't touch it.
Hands up.
Oh yeah, let me see what we're supposed to be seeing.
I'm going to take a.
We expect that now we're finished with this.
Okay.
And depending on what kind of time.
that's right, it's
Oh boy.
Oh, to flip stuff on? He had all the, needed all the clothespins. And then that was actually in the cup. I would have said put the antler in the cup.
That's what I said. I didn't even know I didn't even know this whole bag was there. I set this down. Okay.
I don't have
How many different things were connected together?
So if you had to do this over again, town people, how would you communicate? Engineer people.
Okay. superintendent judge, who's one of my coworkers, he is going to go around and he's going to decide which one's the closest. So he likes snacks and like happy things, and you could probably bribe them. And if you do want to come see it, go ahead, now you can. Those of you who haven't seen the actual project, it's right here.
So what would make it easier for you to communicate? Other than the diagram. When I'm listening to people, I was listening to give directions, and to me sometimes it was too much all at once. So yeah, to do it in chunks, like maybe start with the top end, or start with an arm or something like that, and kind of build on it instead of trying to tell too many things at the same time.
And what I think is interesting is the Capcom people. So when I was at the NASA thing, and the Capcom was over here, and when I was like, okay, looking at all the stuff, and all of a sudden one of the Capcom of the other team came up and started like touching it, and I'm like, what are you doing? You know, she like organized everything, so all the balls were in a bunch, all the sticks were in a bunch, and I just thought that was interesting. I'm like, it's just weird how everybody's got a different spin on things.
Their mind thinks a little different, as far as how you separate it so you can tell them, exactly what you're looking at. What does your antler look like? It's not as, and maybe what you think it looks like isn't what somebody else thinks it looks like.
Did anybody notice that there was 2 different kinds of erasers?
Yeah.
And then, so there's 2 different kinds of erasers. There was red with glitter on it ball. There was a red with no glitter. You could also put like dummy things in it. I was going to put a different kind of golf ball in there, like a wiffle ball in there, so that just to see if anybody would say the dimple ball, not the whiff. So you can do stuff like that. Like I said, this is really good for differentiated learning to get everybody. I could see this doing like a 4th grader with a 6th grader, maybe not this in depth, but, and I've been telling people up here what we did on that resource that we linked to this session. If you scroll down, there's pictures of what we had to create, and it was crazy. There was like 6 different clips, and you had to do this and this and this, and you're like, so it's just crazy to see what people came up with, and this has been fascinating. If you go around and look at each other's, it's crazy the perception people get.
Well, and you can make it as easy as you want. You can make it as hard as you want. Like I said, you can incorporate electronic stuff like your Spiro balls, like you're programming the ball. Okay, now is it doing what you wanted it to do? You can do the, all kinds of different things. She's actually going to do one with older kids, and they have to be in a different room and they have to text each other.
Because I want the lesson. I run a social media class. Basically, it's kind of all different things, but anyway, a big chunk of it is they run like, we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook page, all that kind of stuff, and the kids do it. And so I'm going to do this with them. Yeah. I'm going to do this with them and talk about, with text messages, and talk about, how words are lost in translation, and their generation just sometimes does not get that. I'm also going to, as long as I have your attention, I'm also going to do that with my youth group. I thought my youth group could benefit from this because as we were talking, the word nice. I mean, in text messages, what is that word? So anyway, we have a winner. Lowell.
After serious deliberation, I'm going to go with...
It's pretty ridiculous.
And they won, and you're lucky because I got 1 for my husband, but I guess I'll give it to your group because it's horrible. You all get a desk plate that says I'm kind of a big deal. So.